past couple of weeks here on the GG Sports podcast, Jamie and I have been looking over positions in the NFL draft that the Vikings could potentially target. We started with quarterbacks, moved on to offensive line. We really started with offensive line. We really started the needs that I think the Vikings are going to look at in the first round. I don't necessarily feel that about quarterbacks per se. But anyway, so today for you guys, we are moving on to our top 5 cornerbacks in the upcoming 2022 NFL draft. We both watched some highlights, took some notes, compared notes, and came up with a consensus top 5 that we were going to go with. We feel like there's a ton of talent at corner. I felt like offensive line, it was like the top 3 and then a drop off. All these top 5 guys, I mean, obviously, I think the top 3 are a step above our 4 and 5, but I mean, it's not as big of a drop off as it was for offensive line. So I think there's a ton of talent for the Vikings to look at corner, not even only in the first round, second round, maybe even third round, potentially some deep sleepers in the fourth and later rounds, of course. But I'm excited about this cornerback class. I think there's a lot of really good options for the Vikings here.
Yeah, and it is our biggest need, so something we have to figure out. And like Casey said, we need the top 3 is pretty much. There's a big drop off from the top 3, I would say. Not, I guess, a huge drop off, but between the top 3 and then our 4 and 5. I would say is also ahead of what's after them as well. So I think it's kind of like the top 3 drop off, then the next 2. And then I think there's kind of a drop off after that as well. And then there's like another couple, and then there's even a bigger drop off from that. But yeah, before we go into this, I want to thanks everybody for watching the GG Sport podcast of the Minnesota Vikings, where we endure heartbreak but always bleed purple. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, get notifications, all that good stuff. Keep watching our stuff because it's only going to get better and better. Let's move on here. Let's see what position we really need to look forward to coming into the draft.
All right, so starting at number 5. Clemson's Andrew Booth Jr. Now, there was a lot to like about Andrew Booth Jr. First of all, being in Clemson, the competition, his competition was absolutely solid. First thing that jumped off to me, I thought he was really good in coverage. He's a big hitter. He laid the hammer down on some people. And I noticed a trend with a lot of these guys looked at is obviously we're watching highlight tapes, of course. But I feel like he was always around the football, always in position to make a play. As you see on our picture right here, the one-handed interception. The week after that, he had a play where he went up with one hand, knocked the ball down. I think that's a huge part of his game. Very good when it comes to PBUs. He's solid. A lot of amazingness there. I love to see it. And I thought he was also really good against the run as well. He sniffs out the runner, is always around the football, as I said, and makes the play. So if we took him, I don't know if he's a first round talent, but in the second round, I would be stoked to get a guy like this. What do you think?
Yeah, like you said, I think, and what actually, in the first round, I'm not so sure yet, but if he's around there in our second round, I'd be happy to take him. Even if it was if we traded back late in the first or something, if we would have pulled the move on that. So, and I also think our 5 and 4, are really close in my mind. And if either of them are there for us at our second round pick, I definitely think we should pull the trigger. As far as his tape and everything goes, yeah, man, he's a stud. I think he's he definitely has that ball hawk term works well for him. And I just think he does really good at adjusting to the ball. And he catches the ball and adjusts to it just like a wide receiver. I mean, he does the old Odell Beckham thing right there, and he's the cornerback, which is pretty interesting. So I think he's really good in coverage. That ball hawk, I think he's going to come in here and I can see that more of Diggs. Trevon Diggs type of thing where he's really good at ball hawk. I think maybe you might have to worry about him a little bit and how well he can cover. I don't know. But as far as his stats go, I mean, he's 78.4 graded by PFF, 70 passer rating, 3 interceptions, allowed 2 touchdowns, 37 tackles, half a sack, 6 foot, 194 pounds, 31.5-inch arms, and about 8.5-inch hands. So hands are kind of smaller, but you kind of see that a lot with these cornerbacks. But otherwise, pretty good length, pretty good weight.
Obviously, his hand size doesn't matter because he's pulling off one-handed picks. So
Yeah, obviously that's not that big of a deal. As long he doesn't have to worry about fumbling the ball more than likely. So maybe like Kenny Pickett might have to, but the competition's there for sure, like you said. And yeah, I mean, I think he could be a stud. He's just a guy that I just think he's going to bring the interception thing. Seems like he'll be able to carry that into the NFL. So
yeah, let's hope so. I like him. If they took him in the second round, I'd be happy about that. So
yeah, same. But
all right,
so number
moving on to number
4.
4, Kyer. Oh,
Oh,
back.
sneak peek. Oh,
You're good.
sneak peek, sneak peek.
We're good. Kyer out of Florida. Now he's a guy. When we did a couple of our mock drafts, I pulled the Chris Collinsworth there. Now here's a guy. In a couple of our mock drafts, I always saw his name. He was available in the second round a lot. I saw his name a lot. I know people like him. I think he's a solid player, especially in Florida. They get top tier competition there.
Yeah.
First thing I noticed, I thought he had amazing speed. He's when it comes, that like just in the run game when he has to run up on a running back, fast to the ball. I thought he's amazing in coverage. Good. I thought he looked pretty solid sized, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
Like I said, that great closing speed, big hitter. Anytime he hits that running back or he hits a receiver that caught the ball in front of him, he makes a big hit. Strong tackler. I didn't see a lot of people slipping out of his tackles. And again, like I said, I feel like the ball hawking thing happens with a lot of these corners, and not even just ball hawking in the pass game, but even the run game. Whenever the ball carrier has the ball, I feel like he's always there and he's always ready to make a play. So I like Kyer Elam as well. I again don't think he's a first round talent, but I think he's a solid second round talent.
Yeah, agreed. And again, I think he will. If he's there for us in second round pick, I think he pull the trigger. I don't know. He has some swag to him that I really like. When it comes to cornerbacks, the ones that are the best, they just have this swag to them. I think that's what it takes to do. I mean, you're going up against the best receivers in the league. So I don't know. I mean, you take that with a grain of salt or whatever. But besides that, I think he is everywhere in coverage. From his tape, I mean, it just seems like he was just on them the entire time, and he had some good interception stuff too. And he did allow some passes and stuff like that, but I don't know. He just was always in that person's pocket. And that's what that stuck out to me in particular, like you said, and he kind of has the ball hawk thing too. He does look like he has good size and a very solid tackler as well. As far as his stats go, 61.8 from PFF. He's allowed a 74.1 pass rating. So these things are a little bit down from Clemson, a little step up in competition though. And he's allowed 2 touchdowns, 29 tackles, 0 sacks, 0 touchdowns. But he's
the one pick is a little bit concerning. And like we said, he's a ball hawk. He's always right there, but he's not necessarily getting the interceptions.
And that was last year. He did have more interceptions in the other prior years.
Okay.
But yeah, and we want to see more than that. But that's the thing about him is you just saw more good coverage. Maybe he could have turned some more of those into interceptions, but his coverage, he's just on his guy. Like, you just stuck to him. And that's what I really liked. And he is 6'1.5", weighs 191, about 31-inch arms. So, and he actually ran a 40. So his 40 was, because that's one thing we forgot to actually talk about Andrew Booth, is he's going through an injury right now too. So that's the thing to keep in mind. And he wasn't able to do his combine or his pro day, but Elam ran a 4.39. So this guy's got some wheels on top of all of that stuff. So that's another big, huge plus for me. And maybe that could have been the difference if we saw Booth run his 40 and if it was any faster, around the same.
Right.
But another thing that's interesting about him is going into the season last year. I think he was up there with Stingley and Sauce Gardner to being the best, a favorite to win All-American for cornerbacks. So let's keep in mind, I think he ended up not having the season that you're hoping for. Not just him, but I think the Gators went like 6-9 or something. So I think in general, like, the team kind of brought his stock down a little bit. But I mean, I don't know. I think he could be a really good talent. I really like the top 5 cornerbacks in this as far as like peer coverage goes.
Right, for sure. I would agree with that. So again, I think I would be happy seeing him in the second round, but first round, I don't think he's quite there. So
yeah. And that brings us to number 3. I know y'all already seen this one, but
The Washington's Trent McDuffie. Now, I like Trent McDuffie. Um, I Washington. I know Washington. What division is Washington in?
I don't remember, but it's the competition isn't near as high as like the ACC or SEC or any AAC,
Yeah.
Big Ten. None of that. It's a little bit lower.
Okay. Because I mean, I know. I mean, obviously, Washington has played in the college football playoff before, so there's talent that goes there. But I
Right.
really like what jumps off from Trent McDuffie on tape. First thing I noticed, and I know it sounds like a broken record, but he's always around the football. Anytime the ball's in the air, you see 22 flying across the field to make a play. Actually, they had a really solid cornerback duo with him and was it Kyler Gordon also played for
Yeah.
Washington? So
Yep.
they had a really solid quarterback duo. You see 22 and number 2 flying around the field a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was really good against the run. He's fast, so he's always like whenever there's a running play, you see him in the backfield making tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, always making tackles as well. I know they showed some highlights of some other ones where they got to the player but didn't quite finish him off. He's always finishing tackles. He's anytime like, and obviously again, it's a highlight of Trent McDuffie himself, but he's always around the football,
Mm-hmm.
and he's really got very good awareness. Like he always knows where his guy is. He's always around him. He knows he can sniff out running plays, blitz. So I really like what I saw from Trent McDuffie. I don't think there's a lot that separates him from our number 2. So I'm a huge fan of Trent McDuffie. We've taken him in a couple mock drafts, so I like him.
Yeah, me too. I think so. He's someone like you said, or is really good in coverage and always around the ball. And he's another good example of somebody that is just always stuck to his guy. And I can see like, maybe people don't want to test it as much. And I don't know, maybe he doesn't turn it around, but he's also a guy that doesn't really get tons of interceptions. It doesn't look like.
Yeah,
Maybe he just needs to kind of learn to turn around and go for the ball. That's something that Andrew Booth really does show. And then our next guy really, really shows. But I think there's those guys on there where they don't have to get interceptions. They're just on their guy so hardcore. Like, there's a chance that looking for the ball, and it is a good play to make and a big play, but sometimes you sacrifice catches doing stuff like that. And he's just one of those guys that seems a little bit more technically sound as far as like making sure the guy doesn't catch the ball. Good tackling. I saw some good playmaking out of his highlights and stuff. And he seemed like he had a knack for forcing fumbles. I've seen a few forced fumbles and I really like that. But outside of that, his grading was fantastic in his stats, 86.8 score by PFF with allowing a passer rating of 52, which is fantastic. 0 interceptions, but 0 touchdowns allowed, which is obviously huge. 36 tackles, a sack. So, I mean, he's someone that can be a little bit more versatile. And another issue that's a little bit of for him is his size is a little bit smaller, 5'11", 193 pounds. That's pretty good for the weight. And then a little less than 30 inch arms. But then, like you said, he is fast, ran a 4.44 40. I guess in my opinion, I think compared to you, I would say my second and him are further apart. To me, I look at him. He's someone that a lot of people want to see him picked at number 12 from the Vikings, which if they did that, I'd be totally cool with it. But to me, I find him more of like a in the 20s type of player. I think that'd be kind of a little bit high for me. I just think his competition wasn't all the way up there. We didn't see a lot of interceptions, and I think but the coverage is fantastic and great. So, more importantly, we want a lockdown cornerback. I prefer having a guy that can lock his guy down every single play than a guy that kind of like a Diggs who gets the interceptions and the big playmakers, but then he also allows touchdowns and
right.
things like that. But saying that, I mean, that brings us even to our next pick, who kind of is like that as well, which is Derek Stingley, number 2.
Yeah.
Do you want to see what your opinion on him is right away?
Yeah, I mean, so with Derek Stingley, there's a little bit of, you got to talk about the injury history. I think they said he has played 10 games in the past 2 seasons, but when you watch his expanded highlights of his entire career at LSU,
Yeah.
everything about him just absolutely jumps off the page. His
Yeah,
size
which is
is the
mostly
number
his freshman season.
right. His size is amazing. When he lays, he can lay a hammer down when he just big hits everywhere. Always good against the run. Half his highlight tape was interceptions. He's always around the football like everybody else is. He's fast, like blazing fast. What did he have? I guess he didn't run his 40, obviously, but I mean,
He's supposed to have his pro day, so we'll find that out. He's supposed to run in his pro
is
day, I
he?
think.
Okay.
I think so.
Because I mean, he's fast. He sticks with his receivers. He's a guy I would almost consider him to be an absolute shutdown corner. You don't see a lot of passes being completed against him, and the competition, level of competition, top tier competition against the Alabamas of the world, Auburn. I mean, everything about him you love, and obviously he was a part of. He wouldn't have been a part of the national title team then, right? That was after his.
I don't know. Maybe that was his freshman year.
But I mean, either way, I mean, obviously the injury thing you do got to be a little bit concerned about. When he did play in 2019, looking at his 9 interceptions, he allowed 5 touchdowns. But it's their passer rating allowed of 51.4. It's about as good as you can get with a guy like that. So if they, like I said, the injuries are concerning, but if he's a guy that's available at 12 and they grabbed him, I'd be 100% okay with it. You love the size, you love the intangibles he brings to the cornerback position. The injuries, yeah, they're concerning, but it is what it is. The guy's got all the talent in the world if he can kind of bring back his 2019 form.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a guy I really like. It is like that boomer bust type guy, where if he could come in and be, I mean, he has like being the best cornerback in the league type ceiling. And his bust, which me and you've talked to this before, is not so much like he's going to come in and not play good. It's the injury thing. Is that going to keep derailing him and you end up not being able to use him as much as you like? Because obviously the most important thing is to be healthy and be able to play. Otherwise, what's the point? But that being said, so you already kind of went through his stats a little bit. Actually, I wanted to say this real quick. So yeah, I watched all the highlights, which is mostly his freshman season. Great coverage, great ball skills. Like you said, 7 interceptions, good tackling, and makes big plays. He would take a couple balls to the house, and those are the big plays that you like to see. But you said PFF grade 66.6, passer rating. So this is his pass season. So 66.6, passer rating 128, which is extremely high. 0 interception. This is only in 3 games. Touchdowns allow 1. Tackles 8, whatever, 6 foot, 190 pounds, about 31-inch arms, about almost 10-inch hands, which is huge for the hands. Number 1 competition with SEC that he's dealing with. But the big thing is let's jump into his stats from his freshman year. So he had 92 targets for 34 receptions for 92 targets. He allowed 5 touchdowns, which isn't very good, but 6 interceptions, which is what you already said, and then a passer rating of 51.4, which that is extremely good. And that's crazy that a freshman had stats like that. So it makes sense why he was so hyped. But then you go into his second year, and this is when people start being concerned because it's not as good as it was his freshman year. But he played 7 games before getting hurt, and I think he hurt the same foot or whatever going in 2021 season. So it's a good example. So he could have went into that with some injury concern already, and maybe that's a reason why his 2021 didn't start very well for him. But in his 2022, and this is something that he said during his interviews for the combine, was in his freshman season, he was targeted 92 times and allowed 34 receptions. But in 2020, in 7 games, he was only targeted 29 times at 13 receptions. So even though 13 receptions, 29, and the passer rating went up and the completion percentage went up, you can see that there's a huge difference to targets, meaning people weren't throwing towards him, which that definitely could mean is that his coverage was too good a high majority of the time. I mean, 29 targets in all of 2020 in 7 games is very low. And even in 2021, he was only targeted 4 times and allowed 2 receptions. So in those 3 games, it's not like he wasn't doing his job. I mean, he could be covering perfectly outside of those plays where he just allowed 2 receptions. So I think you can kind of take that with a grain of salt to some extent. I wish I would have seen more interceptions in 2020, but he didn't even have that many, nearly as much opportunity. So I think that's the big thing with him is I just don't think his last year, the last 2 seasons, other than the injuries, is as concerning as a lot of people think. Is basically what I'm trying to go with for him. And I do think he could be, if he's there at 12, I think the Vikings definitely should get him, unless something even bigger is there, or there's a much bigger opportunity. He's someone that I would pick at 12, and I wouldn't really. McDuffie I'd be happy with, but I don't really think I like him at 12. I'll take a chance on this boomer bust. I mean, he could be one of the best in the league right off the bat. So,
right. I mean, if he can stay healthy and kind of regain that 2019 form, sky's the limit there. Could be that shutdown corner we've been looking for since, honestly, the good years of Xavier Rhodes. So
yeah, you have to think after this guy's freshman year, he was a consensus top 5 pick coming in the draft, which wouldn't be for a couple years after that. So, he went through some stuff there. So, I mean, it could be really the steal of the draft.
For sure.
And it's probably the biggest wild card of the draft, too.
Definitely.
Besides maybe Malik Willis now. But
yeah, definitely. But all right, moving on to our number 1 guy. Of course, you guessed it, Ahmad Sauce Gardner. There's so much to like about this guy. The thing, because people were talking about it, at the end of their last season and kind of before the combine and everything, how they said the Vikings would have, he's a guy who could get it 12. Ever since his combine workout where he ran that 4.41 40, and obviously seeing his body of work in college, it's unlikely this guy makes it out of the top 10. So unfortunately, the Vikings probably won't have a chance unless they trade up to get him. But I mean, the thing that's going to make the guy a first round pick is just start off amazing cover corner. Obviously, the size is just pops out to you when you're watching his highlight tapes. It's fast, obviously with that 4.41 40. Again, always around the football. I saw him in the highlights on a couple blitzes, getting to the quarterback, making strong tackles. You don't see a lot of people slip out of his tackles. It's just the guy. He's a playmaker. He's an absolute playmaker at the cornerback position. And whatever team gets him, if he can bring that to the pros. I mean, the thing with corner is it's that and quarterback are the 2 positions hardest to transfer from college to pros. But man, if he can bring a little bit of that over to whatever team drafts him, watch out.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, he could be insane. And what's good about him is he has that high ceiling, but he also is the guy that seems he has like a really high floor. So it's almost like, I don't know, he seems like the for sure thing. Great coverage. Fantastic coverage. And I'll go into those stats. They're pretty insane. He's a ball hawk too. He still gets interceptions. Like you said, the blitzing, solid tackling, and big plays. He caught a couple interceptions for touchdowns. He got an 87.1 PFF grade with a passer rating of 20 or 22.6, which is about what he allowed on average, pretty close for his entire career with Cincinnati. 3 interceptions, 0 touchdowns allowed, 40 tackles, 3 sacks. He's 6'3", 190. I mean, and you mentioned this before, that 190, if he can add a few more pounds to that 6'3" frame, just watch out.
The frame's small. The legs are small. I mean, obviously, but I mean,
he has that length.
He's going to get into a pro level strength and conditioning program. And the guy's going to he's going to tack on muscle. It's going to happen. He's going to be an absolute monster at corner.
And he's 33 and a half inch arms, almost 10-inch hands. I mean, he's the biggest, longest cornerback that we've even talked about. You already said the 4.41 40. I mean, he's just the coverage, everything is there. The playmaking, like the blitzing, the pick sixes, the coverage, just every single thing you could want from your cornerback is there.
He's got all the intangibles in the world,
and the stats to back that up.
Yeah, and you mentioned those 0 touchdowns allowed, and that's not just 2021. That's his entire career in Cincinnati.
That's his entire career.
And the fact, and he's got the attitude because he said he's like, I don't plan on allowing any in the NFL. It's like, no, obviously he's going to allow some in the NFL. Let's be honest here, but you gotta love the swag and confidence. You love that at corner. I think you mentioned that earlier. You need the attitude.
Yeah, and he even said he's like, I don't drink, I don't smoke. I just love
Straight edge.
football. I don't ever planning, ever doing it. I'm like, hey, I mean, I don't blame anyone for drinking or smoking or whatever, but shoot, I'll pick the guy who only cares about football and is like, I ain't
Right.
gonna do none of that. Like, I just like maybe you should have other hobbies, but not when you're a Viking fan. I want the guys who don't have any other hobbies besides football.
Right. Exactly. I agree with
So
that. But whatever team ends up getting him, if he somehow gets to 12, the Vikings would be stupid not to pick him up. So I don't think he's going to get there anymore. He's top 10, potentially top 5, even if someone's really in need of a corner up there. So
yeah, he seems to be as close to a for sure thing is that you can really find.
right.
Other than maybe he is that little bit slender of a frame than some people like, but man,
Yeah, but I mean, it's all going to be on how he takes his skills and translates them to the next level. But obviously, like you said, only cares about football. He's got the attitude to do it, and
hmm
that's one thing you listen to all these evaluators and scouts and GMs and coaches say is like one of the first things that they want to know about these draftees is how much they love the game. Because if they're not fully into it, they're not going to put 110% in, and they might not develop. But this guy is one that is not going to do that. He's going to put in 120% likely. And I
hmm
think he's gonna. I mean, you hate to put guarantees, but I guarantee this guy's gonna develop into a top tier corner in the NFL.
yeah, I don't see how he has everything, the intangibles, the right uh height and weight and just the skills there. I think he was with Cincinnati. You're not in the highest competition, I guess, but he's on the Cincinnati team that made it to the playoffs. So they played against good competition.
Mhm.
And this guy's going to be insane. I think Stingley could have a higher upside maybe, but this is like the guy who has not even if less, not much, and a much higher floor.
For sure.
So I mean, you got to go get him.
Yeah, very excited about it. So there you have it. That's our top 5 corners for the upcoming 2022 draft. We think hopefully the Vikings take at least one, if not 2, of some of these guys and more. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. Let us know down in the comments your thoughts on the top 5 corners. How do you think we did? Let us know what you guys think. If you want to check out some of our other videos, they'll be right up here for you. Most importantly, though, do not forget to subscribe to the GG Sports Podcast for more videos down the road up until the draft. We got a few more of these rankings coming out, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
SKOL Vikes.